After the end of the British colony in India, it became two countries, Pakistan and India. Kashmir was left out of the vision, and ever since this area is disputed mainly by two actors. So, citizens of more than a century and a half become rivals. Today, with nuclear power and with the unsolved dispute, after several armed incursions, there is now one of the most militarized areas in the world. The conflict transcends to the local and binational and profound repercussions of the regional and political area. In a new approach and proposal of the recent areas, this is what we're going to be talking about. Kashmir. Does India's decision open a door to the conflict? This is what we're going to be speaking about. Let's begin. Let's start. Let's see what the last events are and the timeline. Let's go to August 5th. The lower house of the Indian Parliament abolished the special status of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as endorsed in the Article 370 of Constitution. And the next day, it approved the division of this entity into two territories of the Union, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, beginning October 31st. Already, the government of Narendra Modi already announced that on May 5th, the measure was accompanied by specular deployment of soldiers and the imposition of conditions similar to a curfew. Pakistan responded with energetic condemnation. It called the decision as illegal and promised to exercise all possible options to counteract. India stated that in Article 370, it is an internal matter and that the measure does not interfere with the boundaries of any territory. What happens is what he said. Let's see what the actors say. I am fully confident that with STEP we can unite and free Jammu and Kashmir from terrorism and separatism. You, inhabitants of Jammu and Kashmir, will be able to elect your representative in an honest and transparent process very soon. I want to assure to my compatriot that little by little the problems will reduce and things will return to normal. Jammu and Kashmir have the potential to be one of the most important tourist destinations in the world. We are taking necessary steps and changes to achieve this. Pakistan is seeking political, diplomatic, and legal options. That is our strategy. We are not analyzing the military option. We fear that India will make another false flag operation like the one of Pulwama. Pakistan rejects this Indian decision. Kashmir is an international disputed territory and thus recognized by United Nations. Let's go to see what a resident of Srinagar thinks. We believe in Srinagar. Yesterday, my son, who lives in Delhi, was supposed to come here, but he couldn't. Today, I've been very anxious. I haven't slept all night because there's a curfew here, and life is very hard. What sin did the Kashmirians commit that we're not even allowed to leave? They have turned off all phones. What will happen with this? Do you think that they can hide the emotions of all the Kashmirians? How long can you hide this? It's best to kill us all once and for all. What will you be able to achieve this while eliminating the Article 370? Look how the poor and helpless are dying here. There is no milk for children, no vegetables. They ask us to stay within a curfew. How will our families who are not here be able to reach us? Well, today, the tensions are something constant. Let's see what happened in 2019 at the beginning of them. The past Thursday, February 14th, there was a suicide attack in the district of Pulwama, dozens of kilometers from Srinagar, in the Indian Kashmir, the only state in which the majority are Muslim. A suicide driver that the group Jaish and Mohammed allegedly identified as one of their militants hit a convoy formed by buses of the Central Reserve Police Forces with a bomb car. More than 40 policemen were killed and dozens injured. India accuses Pakistan of financing these acts and abolishes the most favored nation trade clauses that it had established with its northern neighbors since 1996, so it could sell products with particular low tariffs. Pakistan denied sponsoring militias or terrorist groups. It claims that it cannot be responsible without conclusive investigations. But in retaliation, India carried out a preventive attack, for which it crossed Pakistani airspace and bombed several regions in which it claimed terrorist training camps were located. Pakistan responded by shooting down 2 Indian planes and capturing one of its pilots. After tensions escalated to unprecedented levels since 1999, the pilot was released and things calmed down. Let's add more digital sites. Let's start with Telesur of August 9 of this year. Pakistan calls on to respect resolutions on Kashmir. Here we have pictures of students protesting against the autonomy of Kashmir. On the bottom it says, I'm going to paraphrase what it says, Pakistan calling for mediation from the White House and at the same time receive support from China, requested through a letter signed by its Chancellor Shah Mohammed Qureshi to the Security Council of the United Nations to demand that India respect the resolution that agency had taken in this regard. In recent days, Stefan Dujarric, spokesman for the Secretary General, said that Mr. Guterres looks at the situation with concern and calls for maximum restraint. Let's go to, we've got more analysis here. Let's go to the Russian agency Sputnik of August 13th, 2019. Indian Army claims to be prepared in case something goes wrong in Kashmir. And here we have 2 articles to read here. As quoted in the Times of India newspaper, the head of the Indian Army, Bipin Rawat, says that there are more Pakistani troops, but we shouldn't worry too much. It's normal. Our assessment is that we prepared in case something goes wrong. Iran's foreign ministry expressed concern about the restrictions faced by Kashmiri Muslims in their religious practices. This is why he urges the Indian side to return to the region to normalcy. Now let's go to this other one. It says, tension in the Himalayas, India revives the Kashmir bomb. This is by Luis Rivas, and this is from Sputnik 2. He says that this is a political fire that reactivates in this moment. The decision of the First Ministry of India is a bomb in the political sense. And this is not an overnight tantrum. For the Indian nationalists, Kashmir must be integrated to their territory like any other state of the country. And Modi does not do anything other than fulfill the plan that he announced for a long time. The new status limits the local autonomous power. It divides the state in 2 and allows citizens from outside of the territory to live there. But it says that the Hindus, but until now, the sales of Kashmir land had been controlled by local authorities. For Kashmiris, Modi's decision is aimed at altering the local demography. This is what the author of this article says, Luis Rivas. Okay, let's add to this Lina Duarte, our correspondent from Washington, especially what one of the parts said. This is on behalf of Mike Pompeo that represents the U.S. Let's see what Lina Duarte says. Hi, Lucia. In fact, the United States is always trying to have something to do with these conflicts. Well, this time Donald Trump had already offered himself as a mediator to solve this conflict. However, the Prime Minister of India said to Mike Pompeo that Pakistan is the only other actor with which India needs to speak about regarding this topic. The Chancellor of India said that in clear terms, he said that any discussion about Kashmir will only be held with Pakistan and only in a bilateral modem. This was said during a ministry meeting in Bangkok, Thailand. Trump had said on his behalf that he would interfere in these conversations. However, the Pakistan Foreign Minister's affair said that Trump will have thousands of prayers if he could help solve this conflict. This was a totally different posture than the Indian Prime Minister. Pakistan says that a peaceful resolution will not be found just bilaterally, so they would thank the intervention of the U.S. The U.S. always tries to be involved in any type of international relationship such as this one. Back to you. Thank you very much, Alina, for all your positions. It's still to be asked if the Indian government is opening the door for a new war. So what is Modi's strategy? Another question. Is this a dialogue or will we just left there? Let's see our first analyst and then we'll continue analyzing. Well, let's go back to a pause. We'll be right back. Let's continue developing our critical moves. This is Kashmir, one region, 3 countries. Is this an opening a door for a conflict? Let me ask something else. Where can we find, or where could we go find the reasons for indexing Kashmir and Jammu to India? President of India could say that we could find one of the decisions made by Modi regarding the status of Kashmir through putting down the Article 370 of the Constitution, which guaranteed independency to this region. This was one of his offerings during his last campaign. This came after the tensions that had been rising. He said that he would integrate fully Kashmir to India. This country holds 177 million Muslims, and their religiousness has made to change some of the religious names of the cities where most of the Muslims live. From the beginning of winning, the religious violence has increased. For the Pakistani authority, just define it as supremacist. As we heard at the beginning, the territory is controlled by separatist mafias. Let's begin analyzing. Let's go to Ednader. He's a historian. He joins us from Mexico. Let me ask, do you agree that this has to do with religious nationalism of the Indian government? What is your analysis? Good afternoon. Of course, it's a process that is of a long time back, that tries to create a large India. And this is a supremacist project that tries to take over the continent. Narendra Modi is a president that was chosen from the party that is based on supremacist, of a religious supremacist, because they believe that every element that is not Hindu, be the Muslims or whatever, or Sikhs, Christians, whatever. So this is a long process. And we're seeing what happens, not only in the territory of India that is mentioned in the report, but also in the only zone that is autonomous, like that one of Jammu Kashmir, with the majority of Muslim people living there. So what they're trying to do is trying to do away with the Muslim religion there. Because you see that this is a historical place for both Pakistan and India. However, this zone of Kashmir is of Muslim majority. And this is almost due to a British imposition. Just like Palestine, that at the beginning it was a British colony. Here we see like India that was under the control of British until 1940. This is a time of excess. We have that President Modi is different from the Pakistani Prime Minister, because the Pakistani Prime Minister is a bit more light. He's the lightest one that we've seen.
A todas luces se puede ver que el agresor en este momento es la Unión India, contrarrestando los derechos de la población.
And it's easy to see that the Indians are going against all of the minorities. And now anybody can be detained. Children have been killed. And of course, United Nations have called on lowering tensions. And there will be a display that, like what happened in Bengala in the 70s. However, beyond the war attitude of first India and then Pakistan, the actors are new, because now China has a presence in Kashmir because of an agreement that they did with Pakistan, and they're in a determined zone to the west, where their major resources that they connect the source of the Tibet and Shibu in Central Asia. And this is a clear path that is open throughout the year, and that's why China wants to take over this due to Pakistan. And in this conflict, China also involves, and other countries can also get involved, like the U.S.
Ellos, por supuesto, están empujando a la India, además de otras potencias, llámese Israel, incluso Arabia Saudita, traicionando históricamente un rival como Pakistán que ha mantenido muy buenas relaciones, ¿no? Recordemos
they're pushing the other actors around their own interests.
Junto con asesores saudíes y, por supuesto, estadounidenses, para ir en contra de la Unión Soviética en Afganistán durante los años 80.
Cristian, ¿descartas de un todo la posibilidad de un conflicto bélico, de un enfrentamiento a mayor escala?
That a war could come over? Well, a major conflict is always possible. There are always clashes between the Pakistanis and the Indians in the borders. And there's always this attack of people of New Delhi over the Muslim people of Kashmir. And there are these groups that are of a fake flag. Five of every 10 Kashmirs have been detained and have spent time in a prison, tortured. But I do not. But a conflict could even come in. But I think that India is careful because they know that one of the main associates of Pakistan is China. And it's also interesting how other regional actors like Iran, that in the past 20 years had a good relationship with India, and let's not forget that they have common historical background. So all of this Iranian background and they've been drifting apart because in the case of India, they've tried to impose themselves on Pakistan.
En el asedio que está planeando Estados Unidos en aguas internacionales y en aguas iraníes, ¿no? Ha habido un alejamiento entre Teherán y Nueva Delhi y por supuesto.
And let's not forget that now Tehran and New Delhi are drifting apart.
Este proceso de palestinización de Cachemira y cómo.
And now there's a Palestinization of Kashmir. Let's not forget that this is the only state of India with a Muslim majority. And we also see the role of Israel that is advising India on repressive measures that they could take. Thank you, Cristian, for this connection from Mexico and for giving us your input. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bueno, por eso hacía la precisión a mayor escala, de mayor envergadura, cuando le preguntaba sobre la posibilidad de conflicto bélico.
When our guest was asked about the possibility of a war, he says that there's always been an increased tension there. Let's concentrate on the place where Kashmir is located in the world. Let's see what it's all about. Let's go to the map. Our guests are on the net. Let's go to a pause and we'll be right back. Today we're speaking about Kashmir, and we ask ourselves if the decision of India opens the door to a conflict. Let's go see the posters that some other actors have defined. In the past years, China and Pakistan have had good relations. Peking has financially helped Islamabad. They have also encouraged their coming into the Silk Route. Their closeness has been reflected a couple of days after the decision of Modi on Kashmir. After the meetings, Wang Yi said that China will defend the justice in the topic of Kashmir. India, meanwhile, is trying to diminish their advance in the commercial sense. The White House has now had a shift of postures, because before they had good ties with Pakistan. They even had this invasion of Afghanistan. Now they're closer to India because they want to overturn the agreements that they've done with Russia. India has bought lots of weapons, and of course both Russia and the US dispute being the person who supplies them. On his behalf, the Iranian president spoke with the Prime Minister of Pakistan and called on moderation and to put an end to the assassination and insecurity of civilians. And he also said that the topic of Kashmir will never have a military solution, so there would be a need to find diplomatic means. As we promised, let's continue analyzing. We've got Dr. San Vicente. It's an honor to have you back here. And Bacen is also a recurring guest here. Let's see what Iñaki says. What is the level of risk did you see here? Well, I think to analyze what we see, what happens in Kashmir, we need to change a little bit of the perspective of interpretation of the context in all of the world conflicts. I think it's the first thing we should do. The second thing is that there is something behind all of this. There are more profound reasons that make us see not only Kashmir, because this might end up with thousands of people. But the conflict behind all of this, underlying, is the policy that Modi has taken right after he took presidency, when he invited the countries of the Gulf of Bengal to be with his position. This is totally different to the one he had in 2014. Everything says that Modi and India are aiming at creating a great zone of the ocean that takes over Bangladesh, India, Thailand, to counteract the Silk Route. These are just recent data that have been just discovered and that imply the opening conflicts that may take a long time. So the situation of Kashmir could be a policy that from this position could answer a triple objective: to give up an internal solution, to an economic solution. The growth of 2015 was 7-point-something%. And now it's decreased, and this has obviously made the situation much worse. And it's to create a situation of tension, so there could be an opening of military intervention. So the military support needs minute-by-minute attention, because with all of the technology at their hands, and if they're not up to date, they start losing efficiency. And another thing is that Pakistan is saying that it could be an expansion of agriculture territories. So India could buy territory in India by displacing the territory there and finding agriculture and industry lands there. This is the worst thing that could happen. All of these things that I just mentioned is just taking the tension a bit more to the north, and at the same time showing the people of the Gulf of Bengala that represent 21% of the world population, that they can show that India has enough strategic independence and future perspective and capacity to have conflicts on 2 or 3 fronts. So they can see in India a support with this alleged new threats. Do you think that we have to create a new perspective of thought? Let's go with our next guest. Well, taking the last point of my partner on the table, we can see that Kashmir, either because of the route of the silk or the geographical zone that is so rich in water that Pakistan so much needs, and also India, where there is a huge territory that is so dry. So there are some strategic strategies there that are disputing this area. So, of course, the United States has taken advantage of all of this. Their main business, and I guess it's the main attractive to this, is to sell weapons. 75% of the weapons that India buys come from Russia. But of course, now what they want to do is become their sole provider. So there is no possibility that the people of Pakistan could be taken out of their territory in a pacific way. This is what President Modi has suggested. So it would be a way to confront the crisis now. There's also this racist position against people and religious. Maybe this would be a way to gather this population and maybe justify an intervention using Kashmir as a pretext. This is how our team summarizes the whole thing. Kashmir, 1 region, 3 countries, expulsive cocktail in South Asia. It's located on the northwest of Afghanistan, to the east with China, southwest with Pakistan, to the south with India. The administration is divided with these 3 last countries. So Pakistan controls 37% of the northern territories and Azad Kashmir. India, 43%. This is the state of Jammu and Kashmir. China, 20%. This is Aksai, China, and Shakshgam Valley. It has a characteristic of 13 million people. It is concentrated a valley of great natural beauty, and it's surrounded by a chain of mountains. There is a dispute in 4 wars. In 1947, the first Indo-Pakistan War was held when the division was held. And there the ruler chose Pakistan. At the end, there was a line of control. 1962, the Sino-China War, and at the end, at the long of this long war, China wins. So now there's this current control borderline. In 1965, there's the second Indo-Pakistan War, or second Kashmir War. There were Pakistani terrorism to defeat the other one, but after a month of war, there was a ceasefire and there were no changes. In 1971, there was the third Indo-Pakistan War that began with a Pakistani attack once they had already declared themselves independent. India won the war, and it's believed that the confrontations have costed 70,000 lives. There's a religious diversity. Pakistan is a Muslim majority, and the structure is inspired by the Islam. However, India is of Hindu majority, and it's a nationalist government based on this religion. This is the geopolitical dimension. The geostrategic territory for India is a window to Central Asia. And there's also the possibility of having access to strategic water. For India, the control is pivotal because it gives them the possibility of communication between China and Pakistan. For Pakistan, it would give them access to the strategic Indo River. And for China, it would give them more access to neighboring regions. Well, China would not be willing to abandon their administration, right? Well, I don't think so. Because basically, apart from the reasons that we just saw, there are two other. The situation that is opening up, because if the hypothesis that is being set, if it is, as they say, that India wants to lead some part of this contingency and create some commerce controlled by India and collaterally by the U.S., the need for China to guarantee the contact with Pakistan, and they would have to stop using the supplies given by the U.S. This would be strategic. This is the first consideration. The second one is that where there is salt, underneath there is normally strategic minerals that at this moment are becoming scarce. And this is one of the tension matters. There is an article recent that says that they have a very long-term provision of this, and that they are vital for the economy of the U.S. and for being able to export. So this is going to be a conflict, a long-term conflict. China has clear objectives and lots of patience, so they will be able to come to some superficial negotiation. But when you need an agreement between Pakistan and India, this will not be so easy. We go back to very old strategic war determinations. This is that where you could, a big one can eat over a small one. And this is what's happening now. And as we said before, Kashmir does have a very great importance. Because all of these contradictions come in, but with enough economic value, like our partner said.
Completamente de acuerdo.
Do you agree? Yes, I totally agree. Well, in fact, China will not give in that territory because they think it's part of the Tibet, and they believe that it belongs to China. And the second aspect is that there is a policy that's irrefutable of China in terms of this route of the Silk. And these are fundamental steps for China to be able to reach the Persian Gulf. When that region that is on the south could be closed in a situation of a war, well, there's a problem of friends, just like Iñaki said. First, India decided to leave their friends, which are Israel and Saudi Arabia, that also provided Pakistan these fundamental groups that were used in Afghanistan to defeat the government there. This happened with the defeat of the previous Indian government. So we go back to the Stone Age, where we have a basic destruction of anarchy that's displayed by the U.S. in their policy of constructive chaos. So Pakistan understood that they can no longer play this game, and that their best ally is China, and that therefore the best way to attain stability is to get away from Israel, the U.S., and to stop supporting these fundamental groups and develop the opportunities that China is putting before them. And this will be a very important step, because Kashmir reaches the port where China is building, and it will also have a military base in Pakistan, which will take over all of the influence that the U.S. had up until now, especially with an ally that has been beyond loyal, just like the ambassador of Russia. So, of course, now we see that there are different friends in the region, and that they will not give in their position. India should not play this destructive game that we understand that one of the reasons is due to the crisis they have internally. Well, probably the population of India is now larger. So they need lands, they need resources. And this ideology of the nationalism, just like the one of Trump, is gathering people for these options. So you think that the position of India is destructive? Well, it's terribly destructive. The first one because it goes hand in hand with the policies that have been determined
en este caso la pinza de la ruta de la seda con China y la pinza de, digamos, del imperio norteamericano y que no se
of the U.S. policies.
Entonces quieren mantener
And of course they want to maintain
subimperialismos o potencias regionales con un amo detrás que le proteja, que sería Estados Unidos.
They want to maintain some force with a master behind them that would be the U.S. And on the other hand, they could have erratic movements, but however, they're controlled from the back. Let's not forget that they're playing with fire. The second aspect is that this is generating a climate of confrontation that is irrational in the aspect of the most authoritarian feelings. There are some people that are being followed because they're Buddhist. Enforcing more sanctions on these people, mistreating children. This position of what's called of calming revolution, this further strengthens their position. So this is terribly dangerous. Because the Hindu nationalism has been asleep, because up until now, the Nehru Party was this collective group that tried to impose capitalist positions. This shift that we should analyze, what are the economic interests behind them, that it looks like the one others of this region. In this moment, not everybody's paying attention to this because we do not want to see that this is a situation similar to 1938, where the fascism was gaining territory all over the world. And we had different characters, of course, of the same tendency, spread all over Europe. But back then, we did not analyze that. But of course, we have to call our attention not only on material dispute, but also this moral disputes that is an imposition. When there are other tendencies that also mark the world, I think that this factor that you analyze must receive more attention. Thank you, Iñaki and Vasem, analyzing what has been very different to see what's going on in Kashmir. Let's go to our conclusions. Well, in general, Iñaki Gil San Vicente said that there's we should apply a new interpretation. And there's a lot of contradictions. At the bottom of all of this is to leave all of the internal problems that India has. There's an expansion of trying to expand some territories so Hindu people could displace Muslim people from their lands. And this is very dangerous. There's a hard conflict where surely various will die, but it's not on the verge of a war confrontation. The intention is to counterbalance the Silk Road, this ambitious Chinese project. Certainly, China will not give up their sovereignty over its portion of Kashmir. This is what their authority says. Every actor goes by its geostrategical interest. So it's a long-term conflict. And Iñaki has called us to reflect on these conflicts and disputes that symbolic, religious, in the worst sense of the expression. So this is the end of our political move. Thank you as always for your attention. See you tomorrow.